D&D Beyond now fits in the palm of your hand with the free D&D Beyond app. It's the perfect tool set for beginners, regular players, and seasoned dungeon masters. Play faster with the guided character creator and access your character sheets, spells, and abilities wherever you go. All of your adventures and source books are at your fingertips, even when you're offline. Easily find and access the rules you need when you need them. With more features to come, download the free D&D Beyond app today.
Those of you just joining us, my name is Amy Dallen. We are talking about D&D Beyond party formation. And I want to find out, once you've got them in together, how do you get them to fall for each other? How do you get the party to bond? And have there been things that have you ever had that work really, really unexpectedly well, or possibly gone really, really badly with names changed to protect the innocent? Michael, have you ever had a particularly good, everybody fell in love kind of opening for a campaign?
Oh gosh, I think it really comes down to coming up with one memorable NPC, just a big character who's very ecstatic, who asks a lot of questions. Because I think the hardest part when you're starting a new adventure, whether it's a campaign or just a one-shot, is just helping break the ice for your players. Because it can be hard if you're like, oh, I'm this rogue and I like to sit in the shadows and be mysterious, to be like, well, heck, how do I like just spark a conversation with this gnome who's getting drunk at the, over there? And then having like a friendly NPC be like, oh, it's someone's birthday. I need people to come dance. And then that person goes and physically grabs your different characters, puts you all together and does a dance competition. And then suddenly you've forced your players into having a shared memory. You force them into a situation where they like have to start interacting with one another. So I think looking for those types of opportunities and having those types of NPCs just break the ice for your characters is really all you need.
I love that Kailey had already had a ball which gets interrupted by dragons, and here we have a tavern that gets interrupted by a dance fight. I love both versions of these so much. Kailey, what about you? What works really well to get the players, once you've got them together, to fall for each other?
Yeah, I mean, a memorable NPC, but also a common enemy. Like, throwing a dragon at a bunch of level ones is hilarious and great. And gosh, is that a bonding experience. But I also, there's a couple of times, and this was further into the campaign, but with a lot of the campaigns that I stream, like we bring on guest people and we have rotating casts. So there are moments where I've got like the 15-minute tech call to kind of see where they're at. And I think that there's something really, really powerful in taking that in. And whether you have a plan or you don't, I tend to have a plan as a DM. Whether or not that actually happens or not is, there are times where, oh, this plan isn't for where these players are at right now.
Right.
I need to do something else. And there was a moment in Damsels where my players really, really, really needed to not do my plan, but to defeat Gaston in a musical song teaching him about toxic masculinity.
That's amazing.
That's what they needed to do. I
cannot argue with it.
Right?
That's amazing.
That was the thing that needed to happen in the moment, and they wanted that. And I could give that to them, and that's like, it's the kind of moment that's so memorable that like they still talk about it. And anybody who was in the chat that day still talks about it. It is something that brought everybody together. And it was just me taking a moment, seeing where the players were, and deciding to do something different.
I will say, I can tell, I've been lucky enough not to have a lot of full-on disaster stories, but I have certainly had the situation where I'm making another in the long line of series of characters, and I have chosen something outside the box, and, almost all my characters are very friendly, very into the party and into the mission, but I did once pick a character who was very flat about things. Just very flat about things, and it ended up being a surprisingly long campaign. And I found myself with the challenge of being like, all right, how do I endear this character to others and endear them to me? And what ended up working out, and this actually reminds me, someone had asked last week when we were on stream with Joe about how to take, or no, I'm actually thinking of a couple of weeks ago when he was making characters with Riley. My memories, they're very jumbled. Somebody asked how you take a joke or a meme character. And if you introduce something just silly and it ends up needing to continue over time, how do you adapt to that? And the answer to that, I was thinking, is the same thing I kind of had to hit on for my very flat character, which is that whether or not you are playing someone expressive, you have a choice to decide that they care about stuff. And this is really just player advice. But if you decide it matters to you what happens to the other players, no matter how you're figuring out how to express that, whether you're begrudgingly caring about them, the Wolverine model of the reluctant guardian, or whether you are super enthusiastically caring about them, you're going to be invested in what happens to the group. And that's a choice you can make, even if you have a very flat personality or a very emotional distance that you're trying to keep. And that sort of is, I think, the magic trick that unlocks that one for me. What about y'all? Have you ever encountered on the player side the how to get on board problem?
I feel like there's having that sort of like awkward pause in that first session is a very normal, very common thing. And like, I wouldn't sweat it. But I would, as a player, I'm always trying to figure out like, how does my character relate to someone who is entirely different from me? So a good example is, Hamill, who I played last week on stream with Joe in that surprise encounter that terrified me. Because
you were great,
Scarecrow,
though. It was so much fun.
It was really fun, but that creature was so scary.
Oh yeah.
So he's a sorcerer, so he doesn't read books, like what? But there's a wizard in the party that I play with on Tuesdays. And so I was like, how do I relate to this wizard who's very bookish and can be pretty reserved? And I decided Hamill has no concept of like how people learn magic. He just kind of does magic. And so there's a certain spell that I want to take next level. And so I had my character actually go to the wizard and be like, I need you to teach me how to learn this spell. And then we had this really hilarious moment where I'm like, Hamill can't read these books full of like weird script, and he's just practicing his message spell over and over and over, trying to learn sending. And of course it doesn't work, but it was a great moment. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. It had not occurred to me to tie that character bond into the progression, the mechanical level up of your character. That's a great idea. Kaylee, what about you? Have you ever had any player bonding moments that particularly stood out or failed spectacularly?
I think, yeah. And it's my intention my habit is to play characters that end up kind of being the mom of the party. Every time I set out to do something different, it doesn't happen. So I've just accepted it. It's just who I am, which is fine. So like my characters also often don't have like interpersonal conflict with other party members, but then there are the party members who do. And I enjoy so much playing with those characters that are like more combative in some way, or like, I don't really need to be part of this group, it's just for this one thing, and then making it really, really important to me, not to make them feel a part of the group, because that's not what they want, but like I want to know what the thing that's important to them is so that I can help them with it. And then my character will always end up being like, okay, but like, you don't know this, but this character, like, they're really just here because they want this magic book, so we have to find this magic book for them, and then we'll all be friends. And then like it's just the almost like whatever the reverse of death by 1,000 cuts is, of just like, no, but friendship will happen.
It's love by attrition. Yeah. That's fantastic. So you can make even if they want to play a cool loner character, by working together with them and with their concept, you can create this dynamic of like, you think we don't want to be friends, but I know we do.
Like, be a loner. I'm supporting you from over here. You're doing great. What a cool loner. You like it. And because I'm the mom, I get to I get to be that obnoxious. And for the most part, and that's like, obviously you check in with your fellow players and make sure that you're not ruining their whole vibe, or, affecting their play style, but also it's fun to like have that little bit of a give and take of players whose energies are or characters whose energies are very different, and seeing how you can support each other in game and out. It's usually fun.
That reminds me of we've got some great questions coming in. Thank you all. A couple of squids asked, and this is an interesting example. Have you ever tried using the common enemy mechanic and have it bring together party members who start off as not just strangers, but actually enemies? And how did it work out? I'm not sure if I've ever done this one, but it seems like in theory, enemy of my enemy should be my friend.
I absolutely have. There's a one shot, or not a one shot, it was like a mini series I was running where everybody, a bunch of people were competing for the same contract from a wizard. Like they were trying to all rob the same wizard, and then they all got caught in the same pocket dimension trap of that wizard, and they all had to work together to get out.
That's great.
And it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. That was really fun.
So, Michael?
Oh yeah, I was just, my husband last year ran an evil campaign, a mini evil campaign, and so we were all just terrible people, as you are in an evil campaign. But we were all brought together in order to take down basically the world together. And then of course, as the campaign runs on, you're getting close to actually completing the adventure. Then you can start having that sort of conflict where you're like, okay, well, now that we're kings and queens of the land, I guess I can start killing these guys off, and I could be the supreme leader.
That's funny.
You actually played out the supervillain team up where it's like they'll get to this far, but they're going to turn on each other in the end. I've never tried that.
Yeah, it always ends. The last session's always like a battle royale. Except my character died like the session before the last, and it was like, but I mean, he was like the worst of all of us, so I kind of deserve it.
Incredible. You felt you had it coming?
Yeah.
Great question from Sellsword Barrage. How do you handle party members who are competing for certain roles in the group? What if you have two sneaky types, or I feel like two party moms could work pretty well because they'll just sort of find different niches and they'll mom each other. Two reluctant loners could actually work to sort of cancel each other out, right?
Right.
Because the go-between is sort of either playing them against each other or drawing them both in. But have you had any experience with parties with that particular dynamic?
Yeah, I as a player, I've run into that, and I think when you're a player, one of the things you need to be mindful of is letting people have the spotlight. So maybe you have the spell that can unlock a locked door, but then you have a rogue as a party member. Maybe you just let them have their moment trying to pick it, and then if they fail, then your character could just be like, oh yeah, I forgot I could just do this, and then the door unlocks, and you have this comical moment with this sort of rivalry that you've just developed with the party rogue.
Which is great because you can either do that rivalry or you just gave yourself the gift of being like, I think I'm a little absent-minded. I forgot I could unlock that door, which can be its own a lot of fun as a character trait. Kailey, what about you? Have you ever felt like you were over-duplicating someone and needed to adjust, or run into players who seem to kind of have the same goal in a way that wasn't working for the party?
Yeah, I think...
Oh, I might have lost you a little bit there. Kailey, we might have a little signal.
Right. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, I think if you're approaching this as a DM, though, think about, if let's say that you do have two sneaky types, that's a really great party composition if you want to do a heist. And then you can create a situation where you need two sneaky types to accomplish different tasks at the same time, right? Or if you have two characters who are, maybe you have two bards, introduce scenarios where having very charismatic characters in one situation is beneficial. The classic situation of you are in a concert and one of you needs to disguise yourself as the performer, and the other one has to set up some sort of deal so that your fake singer now has a contract with a music label. I don't know. I just kind of like.
No, I love it. I feel like I played a version of this with Satine once, but it was a lot of fun. And you're very right that you can design challenges for that require having more than one good with people character or more than one face character. Because if you only have one person who can do that, you're a little bit restricted, right? You either can go on stage or make the deal. And in this case, I love that. Just you as the DM can balance for the things that people are into as they find their different roles. And Kailey, what were you going to tell us about good or bad party overlaps when we lost you there for a sec?
Yeah, sorry about that. Me and my computer are having a fight. But you know, it is what it is. I think it's something similar to what Michael was saying about like realizing then that encouraging teamwork is kind of the way to go. And I know that I had a paladin and a fighter, and it got to the point where like the paladin was doing a lot of the things that the fighter and suddenly the fighter didn't have as many things to do. And so then restructuring a lot of combat encounters or puzzles or missions to highlight what like everybody's strong suits or target all of their weak points, and so make it something that encourages people to work together instead of feel like they have to share the spotlight. There's enough spotlight for everybody, and that's then make it about that.
I love that, because it does speak to the nature of D&D is that it will require all of these people working together in the best case scenario. So you do have the choice to be like, rather than be like, I need one person who hits hard, be like, oh, good thing you guys brought two people who could hit hard, or you would be in a lot of trouble right now. Question from Aaron Lore. I like to fit the campaign/adventure to what the players have chosen as roles, etc. Is that something you all do? I'll say off the bat, I'd love to do that when I can. That's the most fun. But what about y'all?
What was the question?
The question from Aaron Lore was, I like to fit the campaign/adventure to what the players have chosen as roles, etc. Is that something you all do? Absolutely. Easier when we're in informal settings, obviously. But Michael.
Yes, I even when I'm running a published adventure, I will make tweaks to encounters, to situations to suit the party composition. I even look at players' backgrounds to ideate, figure out different ways that I can further pull that character into the plot. So yeah, I think that is absolutely awesome. And I think if you have even situations where like maybe one of your players is really shy, and so you set up a short arc that involves their backstory, I think you'll find that they will be more engaged and just feel a little bit more part of the party if, for example, they haven't been speaking as much, or maybe they're just not as into role play as some of the other players are.
Absolutely.
Advice, yeah.
Yeah. Or finding also play style and tailoring it to play style. So maybe this player is playing this charismatic bard, but the player themselves, they're really drawn to crunchy puzzles. And so finding ways to like tailor both things so that they get to have both and they get to play both and find their own arc in what the player does and what the character's good at, and making like rewarding both of those things. That's like not something that you can write into a module, but it's something that can be really, really rewarding to kind of figure out together with your players.
That's fantastic advice. I have not always thought to actually actively prep as much as like what you're saying is, I feel like unconsciously I've done this somewhat, but from now on, I'm definitely going to be making more of a formal step out of thinking through, have I given the players things to do, and have I given the characters things to do, and treating those as to some extent separate. Great call. I was so smart to bring you on the show to teach me all the things that I want to know.
You really were.
Let's see. We have time, I think, for a couple more questions here. A couple of squids would like to know any tips for handling how to bring bigger parties, like 6+ people together, since you have more diverse goals and motivations. Now, Kailey, you just had to do this for Jasper's Game Week.
Yeah. Wait, I don't even know how many people I had. So my first DM session, I think I had 11 players.
Oh my God.
I DM for 8+ people often.
Oh, you were like 6 is nothing. Is
6
what
is
you're
nothing.
saying.
6 is nothing. 6 is my usual. Like I work with 6 to 7 people a lot. It helps if you already know your players. I will say that. So, and that tends to kind of be where I'm going, is even if not everybody knows each other, I know everyone. And that has been helpful for me for large groups. That's when encouraging your players to have pre-existing relationships between their characters really helps, because you can kind of section them off into groups and give everybody their own moment. And then as they learn about each other in those small groups, then you can kind of bring them together.
Yeah.
The initial damsels group was 16 people.
Oh my gosh.
It's so many princesses.
How is that possible? That stresses me out so much as a DM.
It was kind of fun, but it's not something I recommend all the time. It's not something that I would do for like an extra long running campaign all the time, but it's an experience.
I played for
Fun.
11 in a more rules light system at one point, and it definitely helped to break them into groups, not fully, but to sort of be treating it as like, okay, and the two of you who are working on that, how is that going? You know, that was definitely a way to help them figure each other out, because, you know, most of the time your players also want to figure out these dynamics. So you can just sort of start that process and they'll fill in the rest of the way if you get those signals out in a way they can get to. Michael, what about you? Ever done big groups?
I have been in big groups. I have not run big groups. But one of my favorite things to do as a DM, or I guess it's a habit at this point, is to specifically call on players. Especially if there's a situation where you feel like one player is being left out a bit, you can look for a natural lull in the action and be like, okay, so, and then you like turn to the other person and be like, so how does your character feel about this? Or like, what is your character doing in this moment? Or how are they helping in this situation? So creating those situations where like, okay, the two of you are together, so tell me what's going on. And then waiting for that scene to come to a natural end, or ending it a little early if you feel that maybe it's going a little too long. And then turning to the other characters. And then using that as a way to like move the story forward, but also make sure that you're giving the spotlight to the different groups or the different players that are at your table.
And that is absolutely fabulous advice, because you will always get so much out of it if you are able to help at a table bring out the people who are feeling shy or more reluctant. And that will actually let the more outgoing ones, in my experience anyway, it will help everyone, because your louder or more outgoing players can see that happening and can trust that you won't let them run away with it to a point that it's getting in someone else's way.
Yeah.
And your reluctant players will come forward because they know when it's, you know, they won't be sitting there being like, oh, it's not my turn yet, it's not my turn yet for the rest of the game. And sort of everybody can start to feed in. And if have y'all seen this where like the most outgoing player manages to spot the shy one and then they form a bond, and by the end of it, they're like the duo? I will say that's one of my favorite things to happen in a game. I've seen it a lot of times. Never gets old.
Me too.
It's so sweet.
It's
so sweet to see
it's
that
so
happen.
good.
Thank you to the players of the world for supporting each other, because we love to see it.
Yeah, extroverts, go hug your introverts.
Yeah.
Everyone check in if they're hug inclined. And then absolutely, I'm a hugger myself, so I understand. Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining me. This is fantastic advice. Where can people find you on the internet to get some more of this good advice, Kailey, Bray?
You can find me on Twitter, @HalpaBarbarian. I tweet a lot about tabletop RPGs and occasionally dice shoes. You can find me on Fridays at Pixel Circus playing Failed Save, and on Saturdays running Damsels, Dice, and Everything Nice, the Princess D&D RPG. You can also find me behind the handle of the Walking Dead universe, where I'm the official community manager. And we get up to a lot of apocalyptic shenanigans up there. So I've always got stuff going on. So
heck yeah. And Michael Galvis, where can people go if they want to know about cool stuff you are doing?
Well, you could maybe find me on this little website. It's called dndbeyond.com. I am working on articles and stuff and working with freelance writers to publish stuff. And so, check me out there. I'm also on Twitter. I do want to throw that down at the very clever name, of at Michael Galvis.
Wow. So
Nailed it.
creative.
And if you enjoyed this, please go ahead and give a like and a follow and come back next time with more amazing questions, please. We will have some more amazing guests, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. I've been Amy Dallen, and I'm so glad you're here. Roll well.
D&D Beyond now fits in the palm of your hand with the free D&D Beyond app. It's the perfect tool set for beginners, regular players, and seasoned dungeon masters. Play faster with the guided character creator and access your character sheets, spells, and abilities wherever you go. All of your adventures and source books are at your fingertips, even when you're offline. Easily find and access the rules you need when you need them. With more features to come, download the free D&D Beyond app today.